Today's will be my first webinar, so if you see me making some mistakes, please excuse me. Okay, so my name is Graben. Start with that. I'm the president and founder of Titan York Realty Corporation. Titan York is a tenant rep brokerage real estate company, and our tenant rep focus gives us sort of a very in-depth understanding of how tenants are trying to manage COVID-19 and what's happened to their business. And we are also, through other businesses, we own real estate as well. And that gives us a very in-depth understanding of what it's like from the landlord and the lender's perspective. So today what I'm going to talk about is that ecosystem, that real estate ecosystem, and how the COVID-19 financial paradigm is affecting it and how to survive it. And everything that I've seen out there is a prediction and a bet, because nobody really knows what's going to happen, but this is what we think is going to happen. So I'm going to get started. So there you go. So again, be you a lender, landlord, or tenant in this commercial real estate ecosystem, if the general consumer unprecedentedly goes into hiding all around the world, then the ecosystem has to unprecedentedly adjust to survive. So what I want to talk about is the COVID-19 financial paradigm and its effect on commercial real estate, the timing, corporate budgeting, the significance of April 1, since April 1 has actually two significances, social financial deferral, and how that might just save us. And again, I'll come back to April 1 and why April 1 is so important on another level. So nobody's seen this before. There's no relevant economic model that we can point to say, oh, this is exactly what happened this year. So, but we do know what it's not. So we know that it's not generated from a lack of consumer demand. It's not like, oh, consumers like, we don't want to buy anymore. It's not a credit crunch caused by fraudulent betting on mortgages like 2008. And it's not 9/11, where people still went back to work in a short period of time. And it's not local. You can't outrun the faltering economy to a better one. You can't pack your bags. You can't move your money somewhere else. Like the virus, this faltering economy is in every community, town, city, province, state, country. There is definitely a COVID financial paradigm that's starting to take shape. And it's the same way of those who could see the tsunami coming in terms of healthcare. We're sitting here just seeing the tsunami about to hit us in terms of the economy and what that means. So similar to the demand that COVID-19 has had on the healthcare services and healthcare equipment, with all companies stopping work at the same time, we're all going to run into a position where we run out of money roughly the same time. If we don't go back to work, we run out of money. And there just won't be enough to go around to help everybody when that happens. So what tenants have in the bank today is all they have, and they need to make it last. And of course, the biggest factor in this formula is time. Time, the longer we're out, the longer it takes us to fight the virus, the longer companies are going to be paused, and the more runway they're going to need when they get out of it. So in terms of time, let's talk about the first milestone, and that's April 1. So April 1 is when tenants pay rent and landlords pay their lenders. And I can tell you right now that a lower rent collection in the month of April will not break landlords and send lenders to collect the keys. April 1, we will be okay. We started in mid-March. Most companies have enough cash in the bank to see it past one bad month. But no rent in September, October, November, December, January, February. If tenants aren't around at that time, that's going to break the landlords and lenders. So, and what happens also, which is really one of the things we need to talk about, it's not part of the discussion because it feels too far out. What happens when we go back to work? Once tenants open their doors to customers again, will there still be a market, both locally and internationally, that has the income to buy your goods and services? We don't know what it's going to look like when we open our doors. So the corporate marathon we're suggesting to tenants is 6 months. So 3 months of full or partial quarantine and 3 months of starting your business. If things go bad, they're going to go bad very fast for funders and landlords. When tenants say, sorry, we're just not paying our rent, we're leaving, there's just no more business. Like all things COVID-19, they're going to have a deluge and won't have the resources to deal with the bankruptcies that will be coming through their doors. In the old days, which was a week ago Friday, landlords and lenders would have said, come to when you run out of money, then we'll talk. 1 week later, their message is, I know you have the money to pay April mortgage rent now, but let's defer your payments by 6 months. Because all the stakeholders in this real estate ecosystem are aligned. The missing piece, which was the consumer, is gone for a period of time. We know they're coming back. We just don't know when. So social financial deferment is about taking the financial break today so you can run that marathon, so you can stretch out your business needs, so you can survive. And from the landlord's perspective, they're going to collect their money with interest in the future from the many tenants who still have alive. And in 6 months en masse, landlords don't want empty space. Lenders just don't want to take back keys from the borrowers. I'm not advocating rent abatement. It's about taking a portion of payments today that you'd be paying today and spreading them out, putting them on the back end, paying them out in the future. Landlords still need to get some money because they need to pay their lenders. And the lenders also, they also have people that they have to pay out. So social financial deferment requires a level of sophisticated communication, taking the individual deferral needs of a tenant's business and quantifying it into a financial deferral needs from the lenders. For example, an animation school that gets its tuition annually in August can easily pay April rent, versus the escape room or dentist that's been shut down for the last 2 weeks and could be for the next few months. So we want to make sure that even though, yeah, we think we might need money later, which is part of what I originally said, we still need, there's only so many resources to go around. So there has to be a communication between tenant's use, the landlord going back to the lender and saying, this is the tenant that just won't be in business because they're going to be shut down for the next 3 months. And equating that formula back saying, okay, I'll give you a deferral for that specific tenant for that amount of money. And that way, there's more money to go around. Biggest challenge that I've been hearing from lenders is that they don't have the systems internally in order to track it. So their software doesn't have deferral programs. So they're all trying to understand, okay, well, we're going to do this. How do we do it? And again, like everything COVID-19, everything's coming at once. So every tenant, every building is asking for a rent deferral. Every borrower to every lender is saying, I need a rent deferral. So it's going through all of that noise and finding who should get it and who shouldn't. I want to go back to April 1 because it has another significant date for everyone. It's sort of the date that we're going to know if our initial efforts of social distancing have worked. So for most of us, and specific for Ontario, for most of Ontarians, we moved our work lives into our homes on Monday, March 16th. And that's when we started practicing it. And the virus has a 14-day incubation period, but it also has a mean incubation period of 6 days. So what we should be seeing right now is an increasing in numbers now. There should be a lot more cases of COVID-19 this week. And because we've got testing from 5 days ago and more people are, we've upped our testing. This should be happening now. As we go into next week, if we were doing it right, it should be better. And then if we go another 2 weeks with numbers continuing to go down, we should be in the right path. So I'm not predicting that that April 1, which is Wednesday next week, will be the end of it. What I'm saying is it's an indicating date of to see how well we're doing on our policy, both across our province and across the country. So but again, I can't budget it. We don't know. Sorry, we don't know. We can't predict it. So when tenants are coming to me now, asking me what we should do, again, I go back to them and say, look, budget for 3 months of social distancing and 3 months of building back your business, because we're gonna need that time to open our doors again. And anecdotally, we also have a better chance of minimizing or beating COVID-19 before the US does. We have the two oceans, we have the Arctic, we have a closed US border, which shields us from importing it, we hope. We have a smaller population to manage. Our populations are densely situated in cities, and the towns between them are farther apart. So if we can actually isolate it, and we've stopped the migration of people between cities and provinces and so forth, then we have a good chance of stopping it. But in the US, it's 350 million people. It's literally one big city from Buffalo to Florida to Miami. There's 50 states, 50 rules. And so there is a chance that we'll be popping out of this a bit before them. And of course, I think I was on a webinar last night talking about the Canadian healthcare system in Ontario, and it sounds like we have a couple of things that are going for us as well. Right now, we are at 80% for all beds and requirements in the hospitals. They expect that to soar and go beyond that, but we're right now today in a better place. So I wanted to, I'm going to conclude it in this webinar and I'm going to answer questions, that you should be looking at your business, looking at where are you going to be in 3 to 4 months from now? Because in 3 to 4 months from now is where we hope the latest will be that we actually come out of this. I mean, it could be 4 weeks from now, but budgeting that way. And then I know that people are getting rid of employees and dropping costs wherever they can, but really what you want to know from your landlord is, how do I position this expense for later on? So I'm going to go take some questions here. Let's see if I can do this. Hold on. Stop share. There we go. And I think there's Q&A. So the first question is, will these slides be available for download? Yes, I will make them available for download. Will your PowerPoint? Yes. I'll put this one up here. Do you think this will have a lasting impact on the commercial real estate market? Will vacancy rates change? Yes, I do. I think we're going to find out sooner than later from where people may just be giving back space. Yeah, I think there will be. I think it'll have I think right now the Toronto market is very, very tight. There's some places 1 or 2% vacancy. There's the tech, the gig economy. And in the gig economy, a lot of those jobs are contract, and a lot of them are also out of the US. So from the perspective of, you can flip a coin. If the Americans say we're going to keep American jobs and get rid of Canadian jobs, then you'll see a lot of people in the gig economy giving back, getting laid off, and space will come back. If the American companies say, hey, the Canadian dollar is so low, the American employees are so expensive, we'll keep the Canadian employees. But one way or another, there's going to be definitely blood on the streets in one way or another, and there will be a change to the commercial real estate market. In terms of retail, we might see a huge rebound in retail. The conversation is that all these people that have been home recognize that retail isn't just about buying goods. It's a social human activity, going to a store, seeing people, and that might actually reinvigorate some malls at the end of this. There is, when we are done, there will be pent-up demand. There will be, many industries will have a slingshot effect, and you'll see people running to try and keep up. So that will be interesting to see which industries go forward and that also affect it. Here's another one. Do you think this will have, if I'm default on my lease and were to go to a new property in 6 months, would that prior default become an issue? I'll put that back up here. If I default on my lease and were to go to a new property in 6 months, would that prior default become an issue at that time? My quick answer to that is yeah, what you do will follow you. They'll say, where are you coming from? And they'll call the other landlord. But I think there's a level where if things are going bad, that landlords will also understand that you just couldn't handle it in the other spot and you had to move out. I'm going to go to this one. If my landlord, I'm just learning this, so if I'm doing it wrong, don't criticize. Here's one. If my landlord refuses a deferral of rent, what options do I have? Your options are, you have to make that personal call for your business. If you, I had a conversation with one of my clients, and they sent an email. We sent an email to the landlord, and the landlord sent back a very long email. And I called them and they said, hey, you need to read in between the lines of the email. I can't confirm that I can give you a deferral, but if you don't pay your rent, we're not going to kick you out of the building. So you have to figure out who your landlord is and where you are at that time. If you can't pay, you can't pay. That's a business decision that you have to make to yourself. Next question. Do you suggest we contact our landlord now prior to paying April rent? Absolutely. Yeah. You should call your landlord, and what they're going to do is they're going to say, thanks for the call, you're number 200, but we're going to put you on the list. And I think it's very important to get yourself on your landlord's list. That is that even if April is paid, there's going to be, if things continue to go as they are right now, you're going to need to have further conversations. So at least you're starting that conversation now. And you can say, look, I'm paying April, I'm going to be able to pay May. My fear is that if I don't have enough business in July and August, then I want to come to you then. You can have all, but starting the conversation is very important. Do you think this will affect rental rates? If so, which sectors will see the biggest change and how long before we see them? I think that we will see a change in rental rates. And it will depend not on necessarily what sector, but more on what location. So as I go back to the financial crisis of 2008, and to give the last global kind of connection to it for Ontario and for Toronto, where Mississauga and the suburban markets of Markham, Richmond Hill saw a huge increase in vacancy, but the downtown, which was mostly American companies leaving those areas, but Toronto downtown core stayed very strong. So I think the core will continue to be healthy. It will definitely give up some space. I think you'll see the bigger effects in the suburban markets in terms of office space. I think retail, you'll see a resurgence. I think people will get back to retail when this is over, and it will give a lift, at least in the short term, to retail. Again, you know, if we're consuming, warehousing, warehouse industrial has been so tight that even if it gave back 6%, we're still going to be at 7% vacancy rate, which is extremely healthy. So I think that there will be changes. We'll see what happens when we get there. I'm going down here. Are there many tenants who are moving ahead with looking for new space? We have one client who has shelved all capital projects across the country for 2 years. It's going to depend on the client. I'm in the middle of 2 negotiations right now. And one is a mortgage company and one is a tech company. They are moving forward. We've gone conditional today. I had 4 others who just said, let's just wait. Again, I think there will be tenants who are doing it. The next 3 weeks, we'll see. We're going to really see in the next 3 weeks about moving ahead. I talked with a number of different brokerages too. And we're seeing all the brokerages have said everything has gone on hold. And they said about 10% of what they were working on actually disappeared for good. So most of it's just on hold. That helps. This one is a one that we're all asking ourselves. Do you feel that companies, I'll put this back up here, sorry. Do you feel that companies will see that employees can work from home and be productive and thus lead to large-scale vacancies in office space? I believe that there will always be a requirement for office space. And there will always be a number of employees that want to work from home, but we've also experienced now what it is working from home, and there's been a level of backlash to it. They don't want to work from home. It could be related to that their children are home at the same time. But I think that there will be, I think that trend will always be there, but I think there will still be it won't be large scale vacancies due to this. That's my personal opinion. I have no data to back it up. I just have a lot of people saying, when this is done, I don't want to work from home. So we'll see. It may go the other way. It may be that corporations are requiring people to work from home. That's a different thing than wanting to. Oh, here's one. If TY, Titan York, is representing me or secured my current lease, should they be communicating with the landlord on our behalf? And the answer to that is yes. That's what we're doing. We're on behalf of clients, we're getting the calls. We need some help. What do we do? But it's a different communication that we're providing to the landlord. So when we typically negotiate leases, we go to the landlord and we keep the client, the tenant, sort of a little bit back so that they have protection in terms of the negotiation. And that's a standard, broker, middleman way of doing things. When we're coming to this, we are approaching the landlord with the client. So the email goes out, CC the client in it, mention that the client is part of the conversation. And because we don't want this communication isn't about, hey, landlord, we're putting you to the wall, we can't pay our rent. What do you want to do? It's more of like, hey, we need a discussion about this and we all want to do this together. And most tenants don't know, again, it's a sophisticated conversation that should happen between the parties. And Titan York is there to help that sophisticated message get to the landlord, and for the landlord to take that sophisticated message back to the lender. Today, Doug Ford said, okay, so Premier Doug, I'll put this back up here. Premier Doug Ford said to renters in Ontario, if you can't pay rent and if you're in a crisis, you don't have to pay rent. What should a landlord's response be to this? You have to look at the tenant, and you have to have a very frank conversation. This is a long road. So, and there will be long memories. So if a tenant really can't pay the rent, then there has to be that conversation. That's the landlord can only do what's under the law. They have to file for default if they're allowed to, and or you have to work to lessen the rent. This one's also great questions. Here's another one. Hit done for these. I'm just trying to, I've lost a question. Give me 1 second here. Here it is. Okay. What is a force majeure clause and in what can it be executed? So there's been so many conversations about force majeure, and most leases, it doesn't apply. And some leases it does. So I have one client that and it's a retail client, 50% of their leases allow the force majeure clause. The force majeure says, what can I do? We can't do anything. An alien has come down and put a force field around my building, and I can't go into my building. And sorry, I can't pay rent because I can't go into my building. And there's all kinds of ways force majeure could come about. There's a strike, and the landlord couldn't get enough, couldn't get a drywaller in, and couldn't present couldn't build out a space in time. Force majeure. But it's not applicable to all leases. Pull it out, take a look at it. What else is interesting that's not applicable are insurance policies. So in many insurance policies, there's a loss of income clause, but pandemic is specific in the wording that says that it doesn't apply. So this doesn't apply under insurance. I'm going to do this one. Do you foresee a surge in office sublease market once life returns to normal? Yeah, there'll be a lot more subleases, a lot more shared spaces. People will be, people have taken some of the companies, there were too many people and they've now been able to cut it back. They may go back to the working from home in order to cut costs. People will be looking for all kinds of ways to shed space. Sublease will be one of them, and I expect to see a lot of it, and we're going to be there to help our clients with that sublease market. What is reasonable for a tenant to ask from a landlord? Budget 6 months, 3 months down, 3 months up. That's the only advice I can give. If you are a tenant that is not affected by it, if you're a government tenant or you're a tenant that takes income later on in the year, like a college, then you're fine. Don't ask. But if you are down and you're really down, then you're closed. Then you should be going to them right now. If you're sort of open, then you should be looking at partial payments. Here's one. So can I ask for a rent reduction instead of a rent deferral? You're mixing it's two different terminologies. So a rent reduction is like a rent abatement, which means that it's like a rent holiday. I don't have to pay rent and I won't pay you back later on for not paying rent. We are not advocating rent reductions or rent abatements. We're talking about rent deferrals. And the market will readjust as time goes on. I also, there will be something at the end of this that no one's asked me about yet, about blend and extends, because we do see rents dropping a bit going forward. So So there'll be blending, but no, a rent reduction is, you should be asking for rent deferral. So if your rent's dropping by this much, you'll pay it back at a later time. Do you think that the extensive list of essential industries in Ontario government announcement was to avoid massive defaults of commercial leases on April 1st? I think it played its part in it. I saw some essential services that I was questioning, but I think that they're trying to figure it out. And there's always a place where those essential services get tightened up if things don't look better on April 1st. Next one is, I'm pushing this right, there we go. If there's a complete lockdown, how do you think it'll affect businesses that are currently operational? Again, whatever money's in your pocket now is what you have. Subject to getting help from the government. Don't rely on your account receivables. There's just going to be a stop payment. Like eventually, this month we're going to be fine. May will be tougher. June will be, it won't happen if this continues on. So it will be okay if you can pace yourself, but if you're running at the same level, you're just not going to make it. Do you think that the office and industrial markets will be impacted as hard as retail? I think that no. I think that client-facing businesses, which are retail, that they're shut down. There is no business. It's where most of the layoffs are coming from. There are many people that are working from offices. The industrial markets, there's still shipment of many goods. The supply chain hasn't been destroyed. When we come out of it, I think there will still be a stronger office industrial market. I think the retail market will spring back, but it might spring back with new tenants. And that'll be interesting. There'll be a reset of rents as well. What if my business is currently in negotiations for a new space? Do you have any advice? Anything we should look out for to add in the lease? Yeah, first, if you're in negotiations for a new space, number one, make sure there's a very strong occupancy delay clause so that when they can give you the space. Two, if you have any work that needs to get done, that you, the tenant, are supposed to be doing, put it back on the landlord, because you will not get a permit. The city is shut down and all permitting is literally come to a halt. So again, unfortunately, you got to get the landlord to do the work if you need to be in at a certain time. And of course, yes, clauses that relates going forward for pandemics. I think you're going to be seeing a lot of those. I literally, Adam, who's on this webinar, just sent me an email with a draft clause that we're now putting together for clients as it relates to COVID-19 to go into leases and to go into offers. So if you're interested in that conversation, that could be another webinar about what that clause could look like, and that would be a webinar on its own at this point. Do you think this will prompt companies to start having their employees working from home? We talked about that. Here's one. Can I break my lease because of this? No, unless you have to. If you've run out of money and you're going to close your business, or you want to take the chance of the landlord coming after you, but in general, no, you cannot break your lease because of this. It's not a force majeure. Do you expect increased competitors for drive-through sites as people move away from wanting to dine in? So basically what it's asking is, do you think people will be doing more drive-through as opposed to dining? No. I think when this is done, we're going to be rushing back to restaurants. And I'm going to be at Starbucks and I'm going to be ordering my ice Americano venti, and I'm going to be happy doing it. So I think I'm done. There's a chat thing going on here, but I think at this point we'll call it quits. If you have any questions, if you have any ideas that you want to bounce off me and where you think trends are going with this, please don't hesitate. Reach out to me, call me. I would love to. I'd love to hear from you. And be safe. Be well. Kiss all your family when you're allowed to. Not until then. And have a great day. Thank you. Be safe.